For almost a decade, millions of people watched a video with no name attached to it. No explanation, no creator, and no idea that the man behind it was still out there, completely unaware that his own project had quietly become one of the internet's strangest viral mysteries. That's where this investigation begins. Not with a robot, not with a website, but with a gap. The space between something being created and being rediscovered nearly a decade later by people who had no idea what they were looking at. The trail begins on GeoCities, inside a folder called Android Builder, created in the spring of 2001. At first glance, it looked completely ordinary. 3 simple project pages, a robotic arm, an early humanoid robot, and a third page called Terra. At the bottom of the homepage was a single line. Last updated April 19th, 2001. Next to it was nothing more than a Yahoo email address. No biography, no photograph, no explanation of who built any of it. Just a handful of projects and a name attached to almost nothing. The Wayback Machine captured the homepage on May 1st, 2001. It archived Terra's page 6 months later on November 20th. And then, nothing. The trail simply goes cold. Across its entire recorded history, archive.org preserved just 6 snapshots of this website. Not 6 every year, 6 in total. Between 2001 and 2009, there were no new captures, no updates, no evidence that anyone ever returned to the site. That should have been the end of the story. Except another website, AndroidWorld.com, tells a version of events that doesn't quite fit. According to AndroidWorld, Terra wasn't finished in 2001. Construction continued through 2003 and into 2004. One website suggests the project stopped after April 2001. The other says its most important work hadn't even happened yet. At first, those timelines seem impossible to reconcile, unless the project never actually stopped, unless it simply moved. The evidence points to a quiet migration. Sometime around 2003, the project appears to have moved away from Android Builder to a new website called Android Music Videos, which would later become part of AndroidWorld. The original GeoCities page wasn't abandoned. It was simply left behind, a doorway frozen in time, while the real work continued somewhere else. That forgotten doorway leads to the first piece of evidence we can verify beyond any doubt. In 2004, 5 music videos featuring Tara were filmed, expressionless, animatronic, singing directly into the camera. Those videos were collected onto a DVD called Android Music Videos, Volume 1, and sold through Lulu for $11. An archived copy of that listing still survives. It may seem like a small detail, but it's one of the strongest pieces of evidence in the entire case. This wasn't an internet rumor. It wasn't fan speculation. It was a real product, sold for a real price, on a real storefront. That just happened to be archived before it disappeared. AndroidWorld continued receiving occasional updates for years afterward. Its last archived update is dated February 5th, 2016. At first glance, that seems to contradict Wikipedia, which states that the creator stopped publishing after 2006. But both can be true. The project ended. The website didn't. For years, almost no one outside a small community seems to have known any of this existed. Then, in 2009, everything changed. An anonymous YouTube account called CreepyBlog uploaded one of the 5 videos under a different title, I Feel Fantastic. There was no credit, no context, no indication that the footage was already 5 years old, and no hint that it came from a much larger project scattered across forgotten websites and fragmented internet archives. The video spread quickly. Millions watched it. Yet the man who designed the robot, filmed the videos, and sold the original DVD remained almost completely anonymous. The first documented attempt to trace the video's origin surfaced more than a year later. In September 2010, users on the forum WrongPlanet began discussing an earlier title connected to the footage. It was the first known moment when people seriously began asking where the video had actually come from. That question wouldn't receive a convincing answer for another 8 years. In 2018, independent researcher Yitzil Litt tracked down and purchased an original copy of the DVD. Remarkably, it still appeared to be available 14 years after it first went on sale. According to Litt, the DVD didn't arrive quickly. Weeks passed, then months. Eventually, without warning, it simply appeared. On its own, that isn't especially remarkable, but it fits a pattern that keeps emerging throughout this investigation. Almost nothing about this project behaves the way you'd expect. In 2020, Litt published the most complete reconstruction of the story to date. Working from the original DVD, archived websites, and every source that could be independently verified, he reconstructed a timeline stretching back nearly 2 decades. Even today, it remains one of the few investigations to successfully connect the viral 2009 upload to its documented origins in 2004. But even that reconstruction has its limits. Much of the original material is still missing. The Wayback Machine preserved the pages. It preserved the HTML. It even preserved links pointing to the original images and video files. But the files themselves are gone. Click any of these archived links today, and you're met with the same result: an error. The references survived. The evidence they pointed to did not. In 2022, someone on Reddit's r/forgotten websites noticed the same problem. They asked for help recovering the missing files, the broken images, the missing videos, the pieces the archive referenced, but never actually saved. As of this recording, no verified recovery has ever been documented. Part of the explanation isn't mysterious at all, it's technological. Much of Terra's footage was encoded in formats that were common in the early 2000s. AVI, Real Media, DivX. At the time, they were perfectly ordinary. Today, many modern systems can't play them without outdated software or long-abandoned codecs. Digital preservation isn't just about whether a file still exists. It's about whether anyone can still open it. One source has disappeared even more completely. A blog called Mysteria for the Curious, once cited as an early discussion of the project, appears to have vanished without a trace. No archived copy, no cached version, no partial snapshot, nothing. Of everything connected to this case, it may be the only source that archive.org never captured at all. The ownership trail only makes the story stranger. AndroidWorld.com is still online today. As far as public records show, it appears to have remained under continuous ownership. But those records don't tell us exactly when that ownership began or who was behind it. Android Builder, on the other hand, was never its own website. It was simply a folder inside GeoCities. And when Yahoo shut GeoCities down in 2009, every page that hadn't already been archived disappeared with it. But thanks to the Wayback Machine, parts of the original site still survive. Multiple archived snapshots remain publicly accessible today. They preserve much of the site's structure. Its text and many of the pages that documented the project. They're incomplete. Some images are missing. Some files can no longer be recovered. But together, they preserve enough to reconstruct a remarkable piece of internet history. Without those archived snapshots, much of this investigation would have been impossible. A few more fragments help complete the picture. Original copies of Android music videos. Volume 1 are still documented today. Archived websites still survive. So do scattered records, forum discussions, and pieces preserved by the Wayback Machine. Together they tell a story that almost disappeared. But not everything was saved. Some pages were archived, some files were not, some references remain. The material they once pointed to does not. Even after years of research, parts of this project remain beyond recovery, not because they're hidden, but because they were never preserved. The internet often feels permanent. It isn't. Websites disappear, files break, links stop working. Entire projects can slowly fade away, leaving behind only fragments. In this case, those fragments were enough to reconstruct much of the story, but not all of it. Some questions still don't have documented answers, and perhaps they never will. That's what makes digital archaeology different from solving a mystery. Sometimes the goal isn't to find every missing piece. It's to understand how much can still be recovered before the rest disappears